Hey, welcome back to My Mythical Meta, your friendship podcast that's actually always been a Magic podcast. We're back again to talk this week about our Secret Santa. Every year, we make new decks for each other for Christmas with a $50 budget. And the past couple of years, we've done a deck building challenge. And so today's episode is discussing the decks we built for each other and the challenge that we met. My name is Travis, and I'm joined this week by the entire My Mythical Meta crew. I've got my brother Benjamin.
Hello.
Derek is here.
Hi.
And Randy is here.
How's it going?
Everyone's here, the entire crew. This episode, we're going to be talking about the Secret Santa decks that we made for one another, and we used a crazy deck building rule: color inversion. After choosing the commander, the rest of the deck could only use the colors that were not in the commander's identity. So it was trying to find a way to let the commander's strategy shine, but not using any of the commander's own colors. Trying to find cards in all of the other colors that could be used to support that strategy. Or just using a strategy in a completely new way that maybe the designers didn't expect. The only special tweaking that we really needed to do for this was how to cast the commander or how to use the commander's abilities. And we just said the commander could be cast with mana of any color as long as colored pips were paid for with colored mana. Generic mana could be paid using anything, and then as long as you used colored mana for colored pips, everything else was pretty much fair game. This idea came from Derek's long list of challenge ideas. Derek, how did you come up with this one?
I don't remember. I think I put this one on like last year or something like that. I don't know. Every once in a while, something will pop in my head and say, "Oh, what if we tried something a different way?"
Yeah.
Or something that could be wacky or fun or whatever.
You found that on Reddit, didn't you?
I don't think I did.
Just found a
Maybe,
big
I don't
list
know.
on Reddit, and he's like, "My."
Oh yeah, I was still credited
This
for
is
this.
my idea.
Our idea.
If I stole it off the list, we would have had a better idea of how to handle a lot of the rule stuff.
Yeah, that's true. This one did go through a lot of shenanigans before we finally settled on, okay, let's just say that any color can be used to pay for any color. Before we get too deep in the episode, here's our call for comments. Listeners, your homework is to comment with, obviously, the crazy decks you would have come up with if this was your challenge. Have you ever thought of, I've got this blue commander, if only I could make it green instead? What crazy deck combinations would you come up with if you used this color inversion rule? If you like our deck challenges, we've done a lot. We have some past episodes that I'm going to put up in the corner that you can click on. If you like our deck challenges, if you like our Secret Santa decks that we've done before, please click subscribe. Later this month, we're going to cover yet another challenge that we also played through last weekend. We had 2 challenges over the course of this year, and we had the decks completed and played them both this past weekend. So an episode coming up is we're going to be describing our second deck building challenge from this year. So if you like these deck building challenges, weird deck rules, or just deck building and strategy in general, please click subscribe. Make sure to click like, smash that bell icon for more updates from My Mythical Meta and El Dorado Gaming. We do have a Patreon, and this week's Patreon shout out goes to David.
Woo, David. Yeah.
Woo, David. We love David. He's been our number 1 patron. He's always interacting with the pod, so much so that I invited him to be on next week's episode of My Mythical Meta.
All right.
Exciting.
I'm very excited to chat with David. We're going to be talking Yu-Gi-Oh! You're going to hear a bunch of Magic players talk Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yeah.
And we're going to be way out of our league. We're going to get schooled by an expert.
I'm going
So-
to be real mean about it. Just be prepared.
Derek is going to
This
be
is against
very
my
bitter.
will, and I'm going to be very mad about it.
I'm excited to have David on the pod. We've met him before at different cons and stuff. He's really cool, very nice. And if you've seen some of his comments in our Magic posts, he sees a lot of the parallels. He sees the code in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Just recently, we did our removal and tutor episodes, and he commented with a bunch of Yu-Gi-Oh! Parallel. Whenever we did his deck upgrade of Miriam Sentinel Worm, he said that one of the strategies he used, he thought would translate well from Yu-Gi-Oh! And it did. You know, we talked a lot about how that strategy matched up. So I'll put that episode up in the corner card also. David has tipped his toe in a couple of different games at this point. We're excited to have him on the pod. If you're interested in other perks like this, like potentially getting on the show, go to patreon.com/My Mythical Meta. All right, that brings us to this week's topic, our Secret Santa decks with our color inversion challenge. Benjamin, I kind of want to pick your brain first. What is something that went through your head when you first started thinking about this challenge and how you wanted to tackle it?
So my first thing was to find commanders that I thought were not in the right colors. That was the first thing. I was like, man, a commander that every time I see it, I'm like, this is the wrong thing. It lacks support in these colors or whatever. That was my first thought.
Yeah.
My second thought was to find ones where it was a strategy that could exist in the colors it was not, but the other colors didn't have the right support. So at least didn't have a commander that did it. Maybe it had plenty of support, but no commander that really played in that area. And so after I kind of went through that thought process, I finally landed on the one that I was going to give to Derek, and it really it almost built itself. It was one of the easier deck building challenges we've done, and I had a ton of fun with it. Yeah,
I felt the same way. I found that once my idea was cemented, that the deck was very easy to build. When I was thinking of this challenge, my gift recipient was Randy, and I'm this way when we do a lot of challenges. I don't want the deck to be useless after we play it once. I want the deck to still be functional or to be easily transformed into a legal deck. So what I started doing was I was looking for 2 legendary creatures with inverted colors. I wanted one that could be the commander for the challenge and one that could be the legal commander if we switched it. So I was going back and forth between my 3-color commanders and my 2-color commanders. Those are the number of colors that I usually like doing the most anyway, 2-color and 3-color. I certainly didn't want to pick a 4-color commander and then be limited to 1. But I also didn't want to pick a 1-color commander and then just make 4-color good stuff. 4-color good stuff that went with it. So I was really in that 3-color, 2-color divide. And once I found 2 creatures that could use the same strategy down the middle, then I was pretty happy with my build. Randy, how about you? What was your thought process here?
Oh, I was going to say it worked. I had trouble for a while trying to think of like what to finally build. And then I think I was just watching YouTube and I saw a video for the Mind Skinner and I was like, that's a cool one. And then I was like, yeah, blue does a lot of mill, but it does damage replacement. So you just want to deal a lot of damage.
Yeah.
Black red. So that was my thing was like, okay, well I got the colors here. That guy I can just deal. I want to deal as much direct damage as possible then at that point. So why go through all the hoops of blue mill when that would be a more fun aggro deck?
I mean,
and then whenever it goes back to its normal colors with its normal commander, it's like it's still an aggro deck. Which we saw. I did play one round with it at the very, very end with the illegal commander on it. So, and it was mean.
That Mind Skinner deck really warped the games where it was the commander. It completely changed how all 3 of the other decks played. Derek, did you have any weird thought processes that you went through in order to land on the on the legendary creature and the colors that you did?
Yeah, I originally had the idea of this whole challenge thing, thinking, oh, it'd be cool. And then when it actually came time to start like finding something and building it, I guess I was almost spoiled for choices.
Mm-hmm.
It was hard to figure out because a lot of the themes you want to do and a lot of the kindred stuff, they are within a certain amount of colors. And so if you do a commander that flips that, you're outside of those colors, you're outside of that theme or that kindred typing or whatever. So it was hard to build. It was harder than I thought it was going to be to build around. And I originally thought, like, what if I did something like Thantis the Warweaver? So he's Jund and make it white-blue walls. So it's just, Thantis would force people to attack, and then you have walls up. And then I was like, how do you really win? There's not, like, you need something to, like, make your, like, you need green, you need, Bant or something like that to make the walls deal damage back. So I was like, But then I came across Shorekai, which is just, a value engine. You get to draw 2 cards and discard a card. And I was like,
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
the discard a card's cool. And I've always kind of wanted to make a discard deck or a madness deck or whatever. So that's how I settled on it after some oscillating for maybe weeks, months, and then doing a last minute, like, gotta build this deck as fast as possible.
I want to start with Randy's. Randy's deck completely warped how the rest of the games played out, warped how the other decks worked. In the case of the deck that Benjamin built for Derek, I think it made it more powerful.
Overwhelming, maybe, though.
It gave it so many options. I think in some cases it made the deck that Derek built for me a little more powerful too, to have some things in the graveyard that weren't meant to just be there automatically. So, Randy, start us off. Tell us about the legendary creature you chose, and then some fun and cool interactions that you noticed as the deck was played.
All right, so I did the Mind Skinner. It is a legendary enchantment creature nightmare. It costs 3 blue mana, and it says the Mind Skinner can't be blocked. If a source you control would deal damage to an opponent, prevent that damage, and each opponent mills that many cards. And it is a 10-1, so 10 attack, 1 defense, but can't be blocked, so that's the icing on the cake for that.
Yeah, no joke. It swings and everyone mills 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that you could build a mono blue Mind Skinner. Blue's got a lot of mill, but it's like, man, everyone has to mill. Like that's, even like a couple cards here and there. But I was like, but you're in the other colors, red, black, green, or white, which I didn't include white. I think kind of like with like what Travis said, like 4 colors sometimes stretches it a little thin. And I was like, I can really concentrate on in these 3 with what I want. Those are the ones that I can just like make things deal direct damage.
Yes.
And so I really wanted to just even as much as possible avoid the combat step if I could. It's like, have him there and then just deals, sling spells, instant speed, in case the Mind Skinner ever gets like removed. Instant speed, unload everything you can before he's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And then hopefully next turn, I'll play him again. And then I can start swinging on with him again. I mean, it was a lot of fun just to see, like, all right, I hit for 10, everyone milled 10 cards. And then you start, beefing that up, and it's like, I'm trying to remember what some of the really strong turns were in there that had y'all milling, like, I think 26 cards each, I think, in one turn.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was the one that deals damage to each opponent equal to the number of creatures they control. So if I get hit
Is that Rebellion?
Insight Rebellion.
Yeah. I don't think the Mind Skinner was out. Yeah, Kingstone. Well, you don't even need Mind Skinner for that one, thankfully. That one's once you've already kind of like gotten it. Once you've already milled them a bunch, Keatingstone is just a finisher.
Yeah.
It's an artifact for 6 that says pay 5, tap it, target player puts the top X cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard, where X is the number of cards in the player's graveyard. So once you get 45 cards in the graveyard, you just tap it, and they're in their other half of their graveyard, and then on their upkeep, they die 9 times out of 10. So
I definitely think you should read out Incite Rebellion. This one caused a huge mill wave around the table when you played it.
Red Red and 4, for each player, Incite Rebellion deals damage to that player and each creature that player controls equal to the number of creatures they control. So yeah, I mean, it is a bit of a board wipe. On the Mind Skinner side, there's not a lot of creatures that you're really throwing out there to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Who it's like, oh, I took 4 damage maybe, but everyone else, who's going wide or have more important creatures on the battlefield, they get hurt a lot more, and then I just bring back Mind Skinner and keep playing instance. So it doesn't hurt Mind Skinner as much to do that, and it's just a great thing for whenever, even if he's not on the board, I was like, well, I'm gonna deal damage to you now directly instead. So it's a potential win con in some cases, either through mill or through damage.
Just something I think so cool about Incite Rebellion and about the Mind Skinner is that the Mind Skinner is going to add the damage that every player took, and everyone is going to mill the total of that damage, not just
opponents.
all at once. Rather than, I'm not milling just the damage I would have taken. I'm milling the damage that all of us would have taken because of the Mind Skinner's ability.
It's like 6 from you, 10 from you, another 10 from you, and then it's like, oh boy, that's a quarter of my entire deck for each person, But Mind Skinner person, I'm still fine. I still have a full library. I'm not gonna mill myself out.
Yeah,
it's all your opponents have to do that, and it's, I knew it could have been a risk because there is a lot of I feel like more and more there's more graveyard play in our group.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, yeah, there's definitely a possibility that someone's going to be able to get something good in there and then maybe use it. But, it might be just like, hopefully either they're overwhelmed with choice or they just didn't notice that it went into the graveyard. But they're going through 16 cards in one turn, and they're like, there's not enough time to go through and read what all the 16 cards did sometimes, maybe. So maybe, you're hoping that they just kind of missed something good that was in there, and that they're like, oh, that was the answer I needed.
I missed Squee being put into my graveyard.
Yeah.
And I thought it was the wrong Squee. I thought it was a different Squee than the one it was.
I still say that's just too many Squees. Stop making the same people. New characters.
Benjamin got me to mill a couple times when he was playing this deck with Scytheclaw Raptor.
Yeah.
I kept playing instance, and Benjamin kept going, mill 4.
Yep.
Because Scytheclaw Raptor says, hey, if you cast a spell and it's not your turn, it deals 4 damage to you.
Yeah.
It deals 4 damage directly. Yeah. So then, everyone mills 4 when I play an instant. There's really cool ways for it to stack up.
And I feel like it doesn't really draw that much attention because it's like, well, it's not technically killing me. It's not doing commander damage. 10 commander damage would draw a lot of hate real fast. But there's no commander damage. There's no, you don't have to worry about ever losing your life. But it's also like, I don't have to worry about life gain decks.
Yeah.
You can't library gain 9 times out of 10. I know there are cards in there that help you shuffle things back in, but that's not really run very much in our meta. So it's like, I'm putting a hard cap. You have 100 life. and now it's a shared pool almost.
Mm-hmm.
Because since you're all taking it together.
Right.
So instead of 40 each, you get about 33 each.
Yeah.
It also doesn't feel super scary because it's a 10-1.
Yeah.
So super easy to kill.
Yeah. Although in the first game I played with it, I immediately attached Swiftfoot boots. And that made it better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I whenever I did play, I never got the Swiftfoot boots out on the time I played it, unfortunately. So I think at one point I paid 9. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think it died 4 times, something like that. So I had to pay 9 mana at one point to get it out. But it's like,
in that second game
it's
we played,
worth it because I'm gonna pay 9 mana this turn. Next turn, the plan is to just crackle with power, fireball, someone.
Mm-hmm.
And it milled a few y'all out so across the games.
Yeah, it definitely did. Just some clarification, listener. Whenever we do our Secret Santa gift exchanges, the first game that we do with these decks is always the exchange proper. We don't look through the cards, and we just play what we see in our hands, and we try to like learn the strategy as we play and how these commanders and the cards in the decks are supposed to work out. But then we always do a second play where we return the deck to its builder, the person who knows the deck the best. So that second play is usually where you can see all of like the twisted gears and machinations really clicking and grinding and turning together, because these are the people who know the deck the best. And so watching Randy play this deck the second time was a lot of fun, because he's playing cards like Gutter Snipe, Bolt Wave. These are cards that damage each opponent, and so they compound in terms of milling.
Yeah.
It's not just 2 damage or 3 damage to a person, and each person mills 3. For example, Gutter Snipe deals 2 to each player when it triggers, and so everyone is going to mill 6 instead. Like, he found a really cool way, and this because this is one of Mill's inherent weaknesses, is you have to mill 3 players. It's so slow to get to.
Yeah.
But the Mind Skinner has this really cool ability where if you mill one person, you damage one person, you get to damage them all.
Yeah.
And Randy took the red and black and green and just made a great burn deck out of this mill commander.
I think one of the other stars that I liked for it was the Fiery Confluence. It's just 2 red and 2. Choose 3. You may choose the same mode more than once. It can deal 1 damage to each creature, 2 damage to each opponent, or destroy target artifact. Well, I just did 2 damage to each opponent 3 times, 6 damage to each person. So that means that was 18 total cards that had to be milled by each person.
Yes, that was a big one too.
Milled nearly a fifth of everyone's deck for 4 mana.
Yeah.
Like, that's value, I think, for mill.
Yeah. I will mention, I do notice the price of this deck is twice what we were supposed to be building.
Now, if you go
$100 versus $50 decks.
If you go to...
I don't know.
If you go to...
Mine says $52.91.
Because I don't technically own any of these cards. It says it's $104 for me.
Can you change your price to be the
TCG player?
The TCG player instead of the Card Kingdom?
I mean, I could.
Yeah, when I go to his, it says $52.91 on mine for his.
Yeah, that's what it says on mine also.
Yeah.
I don't remember how to do this. But Card Kingdom, apparently $100.
Yeah. And if you're getting it from TCG player, you're going to play for shipping and stuff.
Right.
Yeah. I went off of Architect, and I mean, technically, I only paid $5 plus $5 shipping and handling because I only had to buy 2 cards.
You know, Randy, I'm with you. I made a very concerted effort this year to try to build as much of the deck as possible with just cards that I had in hand.
Yeah, I was like, man, what's wild? And one of the reasons I'm not well, maybe I shouldn't go against TCG in case everyone's fun. But their shipping's outrageous. Anyway, the Mind Skinner did finally come in. It's a nice little shiny copy.
Ooh.
A little alt art.
Very cool.
Okay, I like that. Yeah, that looks good. That's way better than the island that I wrote the Mind Skinner on.
Yeah.
And then as a bonus, Card Kingdom gave me a zombie token, so you could have that one as well.
Oh, very nice.
Look
Thank you.
at that.
Nice.
I know you love your zombies.
Randy did include a secondary commander that would make the deck legal. Indoraptor, the perfect hybrid. This was a very cool creature that I'd never seen before. It slipped under my radar in terms of Magic the Gathering releases. So I'd just never seen it before. But it has Bloodthirst X, where X is the damage dealt to your opponents this turn. Obviously, it's going to work hand in hand with all of these effects Randy included that's dealing damage to each opponent, so that Indoraptor's Bloodthirst is going to stack up and sum up and count all of the damage dealt to every single person. So, very cool.
Yeah, it was really easy to get, it worked better than I thought. Like just in one turn getting 10 damage on board real fast, and then it's like, all right, he's at 13, 11. And if you block him, then he's going to deal 13 damage to something directly
Yeah.
as well. So it's a pretty nasty little thing. So I'm excited to see it play with the proper commander.
Yeah.
Is it proper legal?
Yeah, Benjamin's going to power up Indoraptor now. Good luck, everybody.
I think power up the Mind Skinner. I think going that route.
I want to do both.
If you keep playing it, yeah.
You got my brain. You got my brain thinking about the Mind Skinner. I kind of want to make 2 decks. I want to power up because I already have a Mr. Orfeo deck that Travis got me. So I think I want to, like, Indoraptor could go straight into that deck. It'd be great.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
And
nasty.
so I've been thinking about. I want to make a mono blue deck for the Mind Skinner and a Jund deck for the Mind Skinner and see what I can do.
Awesome.
See how many ways you can skin this cat?
Yeah, exactly.
How many ways you can mind skin the cat? So Randy gave this Mind Skinner deck to Benjamin. So now we're going to move to Benjamin. Benjamin, describe for us the process and the deck, the secret sauce for the deck that you made for Derek.
Okay, so I made Tameshi Reality Architect. It costs 2 and a blue for legendary creature Moonfolk Wizard. It's a 2/3, and it says whenever one or more non-creature permanents are returned to hand, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. But you can also pay X and white to return a land you control to its owner's hand, to return target artifact or enchantment card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Activate only as a sorcery. When it was first spoiled in Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, I looked at it and I said, this is in the wrong colors. There's not... I mean, the first ability, okay, sure. The blue and white have a lot of ways to return things to their hand. But that one only triggers once each turn, so you're not getting a whole lot of value out of that unless you're... I mean, and returning things to hand generally is not that great of a strategy. I mean, there's ways to make it work, and there's a blue deck somewhere where Tameshi can play. But that second ability is green and red and black. It's everything that this card is not, right? This deck is land hungry because in order to activate that ability, you have to return the land you control to your hand. So if you're activating that ability every turn, you're never developing your board unless you have ways to play extra lands. That's green. The ability to sacrifice artifacts or an artifact shenanigans in general, it's red, right? And the ability to return things from your graveyard, it's black. And so I sat there and said, this is a card that I've always liked the just that combo of abilities, but would never make this in blue and white. And so I keyed on that and I said, okay, my first thought was I want to be able to play lands over and over again. Let me find things that do that. Listener, that's very hard on a budget.
Yes, it is.
Because I wanted to be playing things like Burgeoning and
Oracle of Moldiah.
Yeah, all those
Azusa.
Yes.
Azusa Lost But Seeking.
Yeah, just all. I mean, basically every card that lets you play a bunch of lands is expensive, and I could have given you a 7-card deck, and then we would have been done, right? And so I kind of had to get a little creative. So there are some really cheap things that let you play multiple lands in this deck. Some of them are well known. So the most obvious one here is going to be Mana Bond. You can play it early. Just play it. You don't have to use it. So Mana Bond lets you return all the lands that you have to your hand to do all the other stuff. And there's a card that I'm talking about in a second that just really that the combo just goes wild. But you return all the lands to your hand while you're doing all this other stuff, and then at the end of your turn, you put them all back down again. And so it lets you keep building your lands while you're playing out of your graveyard. And the cost on Mana Bond is you have to put everything in your hand into your graveyard. So your graveyard is your hand, right? Like, honestly, there are often times where you're playing empty-handed because because you're playing stuff out, and there's a lot of cards here that discard as a cost or things like that. And it's because your graveyard is right there for you. I made it where all the removal, all the mana ramp, all the everything on theme, basically about 50 of the 65-ish cards that are not lands, 63 cards that are not lands, you're able to cast out of your graveyard with Tameshi.
Or artifacts
So-
or enchantments.
Artifacts or enchantments, exactly. So it's real easy. You don't care about putting stuff in your graveyard, so Mana Bond is great. One that does something very similar is Ren and 7. Ren and 7's less than $2. I was shocked.
Yeah,
Wow.
I'm shocked by that.
And for you pay zero loyalty and put any number of lands from your hand onto the battlefield.
That's insane.
It is. It's amazing.
For 0. That's a crazy.
For And so it's very good. It's just a second mana bond for this deck. There are a couple other the typical ones that say, "Hey, tap to put a land into play" or stuff like that. You know, there's Soul Ring, but I also want to really the all-star, in my opinion, for this deck is Lotus Bloom.
We saw that card occupy like 40 minutes worth of gameplay.
I mean,
So yeah,
in the future, it could probably be shortcutted to just say it gains 2 mana. Return land, add 2 to mana pool. But what it is, it's Black Lotus, right? It costs 0 and it sacrifices to add 3 mana to your mana pool. The thing is, you have to suspend it for 3 turns normally. So you're not able to you cast, you suspend it, and then you wait, and you get it 3 turns later. The thing is, in your graveyard, it costs 0. So for Tameshi, you pay the 1 white, and your X is 0. So you're paying white for a Black Lotus out of your graveyard.
mm-hmm.
Well, then you can tap it. You can sacrifice it for 3 white and do it again. So as many lands as you have in play, you get that many Black Lotus activations.
Sick.
It's beautiful. And then if you have mana bond, so then you amass all this mana and then either play out your hand or play a bunch of stuff from your graveyard, and then you use some of these other things that let you vomit it all back to your hand onto the battlefield again and start the thing over. So okay, so what are we getting out of the graveyard? Their main theme of this deck, I decided, was going to be sagas, and Jund has some good sagas, green and black, obviously best colors in Magic, and so
Hell yeah, brother.
I decided that would be the win cons. That would be the way that to both build advantage early, grind out, and then win at the end. And the idea is you could play them suboptimally early, just as things to play on turn 1, turn 2, turn 3. You can start getting them out of the graveyard later to do pinpoint. You have sagas that'll destroy things, sagas that'll ramp you, sagas that will gain you life with food tokens or whatever, sagas that'll draw cards. Sagas basically do anything you want, and so you build your whole deck with that, and then when they go to the graveyard, they're done. You replay them with Tameshi. There's lots of good removal. Cinder Vines and Haywire Might for your instance for your artifacts and enchantments.
I like Cinder Vines. We didn't see it in the game, in either game we played, but I like seeing it here in the deck list.
Yeah.
It's a favorite card of mine. I like it.
Yeah, so when you're not needing to destroy something, you just leave it out, and when people are playing their non-creature spells, it's pinging them. And then you're like, oh, they played something bad? Yeah, then you sacrifice it, you destroy the artifact or enchantment, deal 2 damage, and then you just play it again.
Yeah, you just get it right back out with Tameshi.
Just get it right back out, yeah.
Reminder, listener, we said that for this color inversion challenge, if there was a colored cost in the commander's identity, that it could be paid with any colored mana.
Yeah,
so
that did help.
So even though Tameshi's ability costs X and a white, we had said blanket rules in the beginning that as long as he pays a colored mana, that he can activate that ability.
Right. That's really the only way this kind of challenge would work. So one of the cool things, this only came up once when Derek was playing the deck, but there are a lot of enchantments that cause you to sacrifice a creature, or cause somebody to sacrifice a creature, like an aura. Those are normally very bad. There's cards like Lingering Death, where you put it on somebody's creature, and then they have to sacrifice it at the end of their turn. Not great. It's a sorcery speed removal that doesn't kill them till they get another chance to use their creature.
Yeah.
It's like a really, really slow. The cool thing, though, it's actually really good in Tameshi, because it gets the fact that it sacrifices means it gets around, regenerate, indestructible, all that, and the fact that you can return it from your graveyard, because when they sacrifice their creature that goes to the graveyard, makes it reusable. And here's the big thing: if you're returning an aura from the graveyard or putting it into play in any way other than casting it, you can get around hexproof, ward, shroud, not protection, but basically lingering death and cards like that lets you get rid of anything, and it's and it over and over. It's still slow, still not great, but very good for this style of deck where you're putting it back into play.
Yeah, getting around both hexproof because it's not targeting and indestructible or anything else because it's sacrificing. It's huge.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to just say, I don't care what the target is, you get one more turn with it and then it's gone. Have fun.
Yeah, it was cool. So anyway, so that's what it was. The idea was just to be able to abuse returning lands to your hand and playing out of your graveyard, and it really powered up because of the deck Randy made with Mind Skinner.
Yeah.
Because as soon as we milled 10, you're like, look at all those cards in my hand.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
Tameshi
all of those targets for Tameshi. It was wild.
It was almost a spoiled for choice type situation. It's like I only have 5 mana. I can only do 1 or 2 things, but I have 15 things like I want to do.
Yeah.
And so trying to decide what would be the most effective thing to do.
Yeah.
Well, the real challenge for me was being a brand new deck. I didn't know the cards. I especially don't know what sagas do for the most part. So it was a lot of reading. So hopefully I didn't take up too much time in the game. But yeah, it was strong. It was
did
fun.
Sometimes feel, and we even made this joke, that it was Derek and Benjamin because Benjamin wants to see his deck going off. It's Derek and Benjamin versus the rest of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he was
it's
like,
me and Benjamin versus Benjamin, Randy, and Travis.
Because he'd lean over and say, okay, and this was partially because we had milled everybody like 50 cards, so he's got this big discard pile, then everything can be played with Tameshi. He's like, is there anything I can use in here to kill those? I'm like, well, this one would work.
Said, maybe I gotta step into the map.
Yeah. So there are a lot of cool cards that when you're able to recur them and you're playing out of your graveyard suddenly become very good. Things like Sinister Concoction as a kill spell, because it's kind of a draw spell. You're milling a card in addition to killing them. It's supposed to be a cost, but okay, you discard a card. Well, you don't care. A Vessel of Nascency is draw a card and then draw 3 cards.
I saw a lot of similarities between this deck and the Muldrotha deck that I used to have.
Yeah.
The ability to play stuff out of your graveyard is really powerful. Who knew?
Mm-hmm. Took me by storm.
Yeah, it was awesome. I wanted to comment that watching the deck play felt like I was playing against Super Friends. Lots of Planeswalkers.
Yeah.
But it was better to play against than Super Friends because the sagas just go. They just go. There's not a choice to make when your sagas are triggering. You just do the next thing in line rather than waiting for the person to choose between the 3 options for every single one of their planeswalkers. It was just watching Derek or watching Benjamin say, okay, these sagas tick up, tick, 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 and I do these things, tick, 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 tick. Like it honestly wasn't as unbearable or boring as sometimes playing against those very fiddly decks can be. So I wanted to remark on that it wasn't an absolute nightmare to play against.
Yeah, there are 3 of the sagas that have read ahead. I don't think I even noticed when I had them. I kind of wish I had. It was like,
I mean, that does make a saga much better than it is.
Yeah.
When it says read ahead and gives you the choice.
Yeah. There's Braid's Frightful Return. There were multiple times where I was trying to figure out how to get Evolution Sage back because it kept dying. Braid's Frightful Return.
And you could have just Chapter 3'd it. Or
Chapter 2.
Chapter 2. There it is, Chapter 2. Yeah, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. How can I get this card back? God.
Well, I don't know if y'all remember how I did
ahead.
it. I used the
Skull Bomb?
Draw Skull, yeah.
And all you needed to do was just read ahead Chapter 2.
That's why I died. My goodness. Okay, because Draw Skull Bomb required me to draw a card.
When you activated it.
So when you tell your story later,
Yep, got him.
dang.
That's awesome. Benjamin,
Anyway,
I hate to say it, reading the card explains the card.
it does. It
You
does.
just have to read all 9 chapters of your sagas.
Gotta read the Odyssey.
You just have to read the novel in order to understand it. So that was a fun deck. This deck was gifted to Derek. Derek, do you have any comments about what playing this deck was like for you?
Being the first time, no idea what I'm getting into. Like I said, it's a bunch of sagas that I've never seen before. It was overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, Benjamin was right next to me, walking me through all the lines he had built in the deck.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was super interesting, super fun. I would definitely like to explore the saga idea. I've been looking at commanders that might be more legal or might use some of these colors.
Yeah.
To make it a legal deck.
Cool. So that's Benjamin's Tameshi Reality Architect deck. And now we get to Derek's deck. Derek built his deck for me. I was Derek's gift recipient. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I originally wanted to build Thantis walls, couldn't figure out what a good wall, a good way to win that one was. And so I was like, what if I did the other way around? And I found Shorkai Genesis Engine, which is white, blue 2 for a vehicle. It's an 8/8. It's got 1 tap, draw 2 cards, and then discard a card. Create a 1/1 colorless pilot creature token with this creature crews vehicles as though its power were 2 greater, and it's got crew 8.
That came up 0 times.
Yeah.
All night. We never used a pilot to pilot.
Yeah,
anything.
no, I made Dale Earnhardt Jr. and I swung 1 time.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
But yeah, so with that ability, draw 2 cards, discard a card. Draw 2 cards, cool. That's great. I love drawing cards, especially on a command that costs 4. And then the discard thing, I was like, I've always wanted to build a Madness deck, but I've never wanted to commit to it because, I don't know, they're not great cards. Like you can't
so
guarantee.
I'll force Travis to commit to it.
Yeah, I was like, I can push this off on someone else and see how it goes. So I decided to build Madness as the theme, kind of centered around this discard ability. So a lot of, I don't know, all-stars. Anji Falconwrath, red, black, 1 for a 1/3 with a vampire haste. She taps, discard a card, draw a card, and then if you discard a card with a Madness, you can untap her and do it again. So she was a really good kind of engine to get going. I use a lot of the red instants and sorceries that say, like, as an additional cost to cast this, discard a card or whatever. And, it's not really a downside because that's kind of what I want to do. So I definitely made the deck better. And then with the Mind Scanner filling up the graveyard, spoiled with choices. I'm trying to think of any. It's not any kind of like spectacular deck. It's not doing anything crazy. It just grinds out value. It just outlasts everyone by just goofing around. And I won with it in the second game when I was piloting it by just being lower on the totem pole than everyone else. Like, I was just doing my own thing and letting people paint the target on their back while I just kind of, use the graveyard that Randy or whoever was so kind to give me.
Yeah.
And just kind of build up enough where I'm like, okay, it's time to win. And even when it was just when it was time to win, me versus Randy, I was like, I don't even know if I can finish him because these Madness cards aren't great. So I had to just go with combat damage. Here's a 5, a 10, 15 damage.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if y'all remember, but there was like 4 turns in a row, or maybe more, where we were all like at like 35 life, and it was just not changing. But we had been playing for a long time in that game.
Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing these decks all play against each other again, except with Indoraptor as the commander,
so that how they worked without all that graveyard assistance.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, because they were all doing their thing because they all wanted the graveyard.
Yeah.
It's gonna hurt a lot more though.
Yeah,
it's gonna hurt a lot more.
I put like a legal commander as the backup commander. It's not a 1-for-1. It's not going to be great fit, but out of all the Jund things, I feel like this one was probably the best. Korim the Undertaker, Black, red, green 1 for Human War 05. He gets +X/+0, where X is the greatest power among creatures cards in all graveyards. When he attacks, each player mills a card, and then during each of your turns, you may play a land and cast a spell from among cards in graveyards that were put there from libraries this turn. So he kind of does the grind thing I was talking about. That, I mean, it's a very Jund value deck. Nothing spectacular going on here. We had our little friend Muck Drub, which I don't even know if we tried. I remember you tried to cast him, but it couldn't or something like that. It was like an illegal target or something.
I mean, we let him take it back because the thing he was trying to do wasn't a legal target for the ability.
Right,
Okay, that's what it was. Yeah. He's just a cute little guy, just a chill little guy.
Yeah, at one point, listener Randy tried resolving Casualties of War.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Which targets one of each permanent type. It says destroy an artifact, destroy an enchantment, destroy a creature, destroy a land, destroy a planeswalker. I think that's literally what it says.
Yeah.
And because it only targeted one creature, I tried to cast Muckdrub to change that creature target to Muckdrub. But Muckdrub's Gatherer text already looks at that scenario and says the spell that Muckdrub redirects, the one creature has to be the only thing the spell targets. If it targets anything else, then Muckdrub can't read, which I thought was not cool. But as the player of this deck, I saw some really cool strategies and cards I loved, especially with having a big graveyard that Randy was giving us. Derek has included some graveyard recursion in this deck. Obviously, the idea is that you're discarding your own cards to your madness abilities or to your discard costs or just to Shurikai. But because Randy had milled so much, I was able to use a lot of this recursion just flat, just shotgunning it without having to fill the graveyard myself. Things like Victimize, always a top performer when it comes to decks with recursion and death triggers. An excellent card. Another top performer in both games, both when I had him and when Derek played him, Honest Ruststein.
Yes.
This card is great. 1 black-green for a legendary creature, Human Warlock. He's a 3/2. Whenever Honest Ruststein enters the battlefield, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. And then creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. This was awesome because that 1 less to cast applies to the alternate madness cost of a lot of these creatures. So I had Honest Ruststein out when I tried to madness in Muckdrub, which made him only cost 2 mana.
Yeah.
You know, Muckdrub's normal casting cost is 5, and his madness cost is 3. But with Honest Ruststein, you could madness him out for 2.
That makes his ability a lot better.
Yeah, which makes his ability a whole lot better. There were several other madness creatures that I used throughout the game. Hellmongrel is great because it has discard a card, : At instant speed, I can use that discard a card ability for free with no mana investment, just to give it a +1/+1 counter. So anything in my hand that had a madness trigger that I needed to activate, Hellmongrel was great for doing that. Yeah, this deck was a ton of fun. I really liked, junding him out.
Yeah.
With madness and recursion. Discard recursion, doing the dance between my graveyard and the battlefield. I liked it a lot. Derek, are there any cards you noticed that you thought were top performers?
I don't know about a top performer, but Osseous Stick Twister, black and 1 for a Scarecrow 2/2. This guy just seems cool.
It came out both games.
Yeah, I feel like, it wasn't nothing he was doing.
Yeah.
Right.
And he was dealing a little bit of damage, making people discard cards or sacrifice stuff. I liked him too. And Derek already mentioned her, but Anji Falconwrath. I mean, she is the Madness Commander.
Yeah.
So if you want to go straight red-black with this deck, obviously I think Angie is the better legal commander for it. But if you're sprinkling in a little green, I think Corum the Undertaker is good too. Not necessarily a top performer, but a threat that scared a lot of people was Sir Conrad the Grim.
Yes. Yeah.
That came out a couple times, and people were scared, and he became a big magnet for damage. And I loved the potential to have Sir Conrad out and then Rakdos Charm yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I almost did that, but I wouldn't get much value for it.
I
only
was
had, like,
almost
6
able
creatures.
to do it too, yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think it would have gotten the kill anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But that potential is fun in
Yeah.
a game with the Mind Skinner where over half your library's in your graveyard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so that brings us to my deck, our final deck for this evening. I gifted this deck to Randy. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I wanted 2 alternate commanders, the challenge commander and a legal commander, that could use the same strategy together. So the alternate commander that I went with is Zinnia Valley's Voice. She was a new commander from Bloomborough, white, red, and blue, for a flying 1/3 legendary bird bard. The first ability says Zinnia Valley's Voice gets +X+O, where X is the number of other creatures you control with base power 1. Neat, but not what this deck was built around. Zinnia has a different ability that makes 1/1s, and this is what I built the deck around. Creature spells you cast have offspring 2. I thought this was awesome.
Yeah.
Creature spells you cast have offspring 2. So this means you can pay an additional 2 mana, and then, or when you're casting a creature, and then when that creature comes in, you also get a 1/1 copy of that creature. Great for enter the battlefield effects, and my thought was great for mana dorks. I can ramp real high if every time I play a Llanowar elf, I get 2 Llanowar elves. Or every time I play any of these elves that tap for 1, tap for 2, tap for 3, and get 2 of them instead, my ramp game is going to be insane. So
Yeah.
at the
I need
beginning,
to go again.
all right, listeners, let's say goodbye to Derek. He's got a pressing matter to attend to. Thank you, Derek.
Bye,
That was
guys.
very hard.
So my commander was Zinnia Valley's Voice, and there were a couple ways I could go with this. I knew I was going black-green. When I started with Zinnia, I wanted to do Fungus and Saprolings. My first thought was,
That would have been cool.
I know. My first thought was I want creatures that come in and make tokens or that die and make tokens. And if those tokens are 1/1s, then that's going to make Zinnia's first ability, that +X+O, really go out of control. Also, Fungus and Saproling cards are dirt cheap. Get it? Dirt cheap for a $50 budget deck. And I have just a few Fungus cards that I've been curious to build with. But ultimately, and my last comment may have betrayed this, I decided to go with black-green elves instead because I wanted to ramp. I wanted to ramp harder. And the funguses and saprolings, sure, there's some like ramp synergy cards in there that are going to help me generate mana or look for lands, but the elves was just way more obvious, to just have these mana dorks come in. And because offspring cost 2 every time, I knew that I needed to ramp hard. So that because every creature I cast was going to cost 2 extra. That's a cost I got to be ready to pay. So my black-green elves was how I decided to do it. Ultimately, even though fungus and saplings would have been cool, I do think elves was the right choice. It snowballed way out of control. I ramped a ton. I drew a ton. I was able to have a big army, huge walls when I was on the back foot. I made a couple big alpha strikes during the game that I played against both Benjamin and Randy. Elf Ball is a very classic strategy out there. So if you're interested in a full deck list, you are going to find the deck lists for our 4 decks in the description, but you can find green-black elves just about anywhere. The backup commander I decided to go with, which means he's just in the deck, Tyvar the Bellicose, a black-green elf that says each creature you control has, whenever a mana ability of this creature resolves, put a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to the amount of mana this creature produced. So Tyvar the Bellicose is a mana dork commander. If it taps for mana, it also gets a +1/+1 counter. That's just cool. That's just good. He does also say whenever 1 or more elves you control attack, they gain Death Touch until end of turn. That's great. I'm going elf tribal. playing black-green elves, and with Zinnia, they're going to be offspringing. So for each of these elves I play, I'm going to get 2 of them. That really opened up a lot of neat moves for this deck. Some of the neat moves I found, a card like Rootweaver Druid. Rootweaver Druid says, let me look it up, 2 and a green for a 2/1 elf druid. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent may search their library for up to 3 basic land cards. They each put 1 of those cards onto the battlefield tapped under my control, and the rest onto the battlefield tapped under their own control. And then each player shuffles. So when you have 1 Rootweaver Druid, you get 3 mana if you have 3 opponents, and each of your opponents gets 2. Whenever we played and I offspring it, I got 6 lands, while each of my opponents got 4. I ramped 6 lands in a turn. That was huge. And because they were off-color lands, I got some mountains and some swamps from it mostly, because everyone was playing Jund.
Right.
I just set those lands aside and used them for offspring every time I played a creature.
Mm-hmm.
So it was so cool to have all those extra lands ready. I did the same thing whenever I offsprung Canopy Tactician. This is an elf warrior for 4, costs 3 and a black, 3/3. Other elves you control get +1/+1. That's great because I'm going wide with elves. And it says tap, add green, green, green. Well, I offspring him. So now I have a second instance of other elves you control get +1/+1, which means all my other elves are getting +2/+2. And I'm up 6 green. Huge, huge synergy going on with these mana dorks and offspring. It was a ton of fun, and I was so happy to see it go off, both when Randy played the deck and when I played the deck. Zinnia with black-green elves won the first game that Randy played, and then it had kind of an alpha winning position for most of the second game we played, but Randy did end up successfully milling me out with Keening Stone. So he got me there.
But before he did, I was gonna win, and you stopped me. How did you do that?
Yes, there was a really cool, neat move that happened. There's a card in this deck. It's a tribal synergy card for card draw called Pact of the Serpent. Any black deck that's doing tribal or what they call kindred now probably wants Pact of the Serpent because it says choose a creature type, target player draws cards and loses life equal to the number of creatures they control of that type. So the original intention of Pact of the Serpent is for me to choose elves, draw 10, lose 10 life. That's the original intent. But Benjamin had just finished a big Alpha Strike move that would have won him the next turn. It made a bunch of Dalek creatures and board wiped everyone else off the face of the planet. So Benjamin is sitting there. All 3 other boards are completely empty, and Benjamin has 40-something power on the board worth of Daleks. And I asked him, how many Daleks do you have? And he had 6. And then I asked him, how many cards left in your library? And he had 6. So I had planned on using Pact of the Serpent for myself to draw up, but my board was empty. I had no elves anymore. I said, okay, Pact of the Serpent, I'm going to name Dalek, and that target player is going to be Benjamin and not me. So Benjamin drew 6, lost 6 life, and that left him with an empty library. And he was scouring through his graveyard looking for anything he could do to survive, to get a card back into his library for the draw step. Could not find one. Died on his draw step from an empty library. I was pretty happy for that to happen.
That was an alley-oop courtesy of Mind Skinner.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
I milled him down to 6.
Kobe. Yeah, that was awesome. A couple other overperformers for the Zinnia Elves deck. There's a card called the Voice of Many, an elf that says whenever it enters the battlefield, draw a card for each opponent who controls fewer creatures than you. So Voice of Many wants you to have the most creatures on the board so you can draw more cards. Well, I offspring him, which gets me more creatures onto the battlefield. and I was able to draw 6 cards off 2 Voices of Many. That felt really good. And then, just in general, this was great value for both Randy's and my game. It's an enchantment called Path of Discovery. I think any green deck that wants to go wide, maybe you're doing Saprolings, Elves, whatever, I don't think it matters. Path of Discovery is a great enchantment that's going to help you either ramp or power up or card select. Like, get the best card onto the top of your deck, get +1/+1 counters, or get lands into your hand. Path of Discovery is an enchantment for 3 and a green. Whenever a creature you control enters, it explores. This was great with Offspring because now I have 2 creatures exploring each turn instead of only 1. Great for the elves that are making elf tokens because every elf token is exploring. So I would put cards into my graveyard or lands into my hand until I got the next card that I definitely wanted. Leave that on top and get a +1/+1 counter for each one. Like for as many times as the creatures came out. So Path of Discovery worked out really great for this deck. If you're doing green elves, green black elves, green blue elves, I think it's a great elf card. It came out during Ixalan in order to synergize with Merfolk, but it don't say Merfolk on the card. It says any creature. So you can splash green in your vampire deck, have your vampire start exploring. Like in Ixalan, this is an all-star anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because Ixalan was a tribal or a kindred set to start with. So that was my Zinnia deck. Tons of fun. Randy, were there any cards that you saw that you really liked or stuck out to you?
I was going to say that along with Path of Discovery, Realm Walker, like them together was just really nice. Because Realm Walker is a 3/2 for a creature shapeshifter, and it says as Realm Walker enters the battlefield, choose the creature type.
Elves.
You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast creature spells of the chosen type from the top of your library. It was look, cast the elf. It triggers Path of Discovery. I look at the next top card, look at the land, put it in my hand, or it's a creature. I know I got another creature to play, and I could just kind of go through 4 or 5 different cards. It's like, I didn't have anything in hand I really wanted, but I got a lot of stuff from the top of the library, which would be pretty nice.
I want to add something on. Benjamin and I have talked in the past in our deck building episodes, in our deck building templates. I'll put that link up here in the video. Cards like this that say you can play cards from the top of your library, those are like card draw.
Mm-hmm.
They're not, but they are like card draw because if you do cast that top spell, you can keep going. You can look at the next card. If it fits the criteria of what you can cast, like Realm Walker is looking for elves, then it's like you drew it because now you have access to it and now you can cast it. So I literally have it in the card draw section of my deck list.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's saying I can always look at that next one, and as long as it's an elf, it's like drawing a...
Yeah, there was unfortunately, because of my own deck that I built, playing against Mindskinner, if I did end up with a card on top of the library, I'm like, yeah, that's... And sometimes I would, like, it would have to be revealed, whatever, so everyone knows, like, what was there. But then it's like, I'm never going to get to see it because after me was Benjamin, so I'd have to mill it because of Mindskinner. Like,
Yeah.
well, that one, then in the next 9. But then I can at least know what I had on top because of Realm Walker. I'm like, well, let me see what I have coming up. Okay, I know what I'm going to draw next turn at least. I can kind of plan around that if I don't have the mana to do it now.
Yeah. I literally made that same goof when I played the deck. I was like, ooh, look at the top card after exploring.
Look at it
being
go.
like, yes, that's a great card. I can't wait to get to it. And then just watch it get milled away like an idiot.
Yeah, it happens. So playing it in a game without Mindskinner will be a fun time. I mean, playing with Mindskinner, don't get me wrong, I love playing against my own deck that I built because it was just fun to be like, all right, let's churn and burn. And that deck does have some graveyard stuff in there, but I thought it did.
Oh yeah, there's a few. Squirming Emergence. Randy,
Yeah,
remember
yeah.
when both of us had Squirming Emergence at the same time in our
think-
2 different decks?
I think 3 of the decks. I thought someone else played one too.
I don't remember, but I just remember
We both were
Benjamin
like, yeah.
Benjamin getting a big milling for us for the whole table, and then I said, "Ooh, it looks like something in me is squirming for next turn."
And
And
I had
Randy
it in
goes,
hand. I'm like,
"Me too." So then we showed both of our squirming emergences to each other, which sounds naughty when you say it like that. Randy and I showed our squirming emergences to each other.
yeah.
Yeah,
It was a fun deck. It was my first elf ball deck.
Benjamin, you had it too?
No, it's in the deck that Randy made for me, and it's also
Okay.
so I was milling people, but if I had gotten it, I would have played it too.
Yeah. So but that's why I was like, gotta be in someone else's deck because I put it in.
But no, it's in the maybe board.
So those were our 4 decks. We had an amazing time. We played lots of great games that weekend. We played with these decks twice. My Zinnia deck won once. And then, like we said, Derek's Shurikai. Shurikai was the commander for that one. That one won the second time. But all decks made excellent showings. It was really cool to see these off-color, color inversion decks go off. Make sure you tune in 2 weeks when we talk about the other challenge we did this year, because we played those decks the same weekend. So we really had an action-packed weekend with a lot of deck challenges going off, and it was a ton of fun. Benjamin, give us some words of wisdom about Secret Santa decks and deck challenges. What does our group get out of this?
Yeah, so words of wisdom. If you have a hobby that you share with some friends or family, especially close friends and family, find a way to give to your friends something interesting. And hobbies are a great way to do that, right? And if it's like, oh, we set a budget and that made us find some interesting cards that maybe we wouldn't play.
Like Muckdrub.
Yeah.
It's a bad card, but Derek found a cool way to include it.
And we had fun. They had fun, like going, who's going to cast the spell? Then I'm going to Muckdrub, right? And so the budgets make things interesting. The challenge makes things interesting. We made our decks with the people in mind. I know Travis said that he built an elf deck for Randy because Randy didn't have an elf deck. Like,
yeah,
who doesn't have
Randy,
an elf deck?
In his entire career has never done elf tribal. I was like, I need to show Randy just the raw power of elves all seeing each other do stuff.
Yeah.
Just doing what elves do. I need to show Randy this.
My first commander was an elf, was not an elf ball deck.
Right. Your first commander was bad.
It was my first, it's my first one.
Glissa.
It was Glissa Artifacts.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, hey, this can be applied to basically any hobby. If you and your buddies are baseball fans, right, or basketball fans, like go see the Globetrotters or go try to play something like, see if y'all can make up Blurn Ball for the weekend or something, or if you are, whatever it is. I'm not gonna. There's too many hobbies out there. I will name one more. If you and your friends are chess fans, try hexagonal chess.
Ooh, 3D chess.
Yeah, 3D chess. I love team chess.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyways, there's any number of things where you can just try something a little different, and when you've got friends that are all into a hobby enough that they're willing to try that new thing, it gives you that story and that camaraderie that now I don't have with other Magic players. I have it with this group, with the Metapods, because we do this thing and we're giving gifts. And now, from now till forever, when I pull out a gift deck, I think of the person and they're rooting for me, and we have these cool stories. And so it's a good way at this time of year, especially when you're thinking about gifts and you're thinking about friends and family. It's a great time to get together and say, let's try something different and build that thing together.
Benjamin, thank you so much. Randy, thank you for tolerating us playing Magic after all these years. It really bonds us together, and Derek had to leave early, but obviously I love what he brings to the table too. This deck challenge, this color inversion was his idea.
Mhm.
And he's got a whole Google Doc full of other challenges that we're going to get to eventually. And it's really a spark that keeps our deck building minds always churning. So our meta is a true gem, and our Secret Santa is something that I look forward to every year. So
How many years have we been doing it?
6.
this was year 6.
Okay, so listeners, if you want to see what our previous deck building challenges and the decks we've built, let us know. We're happy to share that. Should that be a Patreon perk? I guess ask for it in the comments.
Nah, ask for it in the comments. Listeners, please make sure to click subscribe if you liked what you heard today and you want to see more, because we've got lots of deck challenges that we've done in the past, deck challenges coming up, and it is really a gift to hang out with you guys and share this hobby with you. Benjamin, what is our email address where people can contact us directly with questions, comments, or ideas for news from the warfronts?
You can email us at mymythicalmeta@gmail.com.
Randy, what's our Patreon address?
Patreon.com/MyMythicalMeta.
You
You
got
did
it.
it.
Nailed it.
I was like, how dare you give him the email? I had it written down.
Even with the spin, Randy got it. Okay. Thank you guys so much for listening. Derek, Randy, Benjamin, thank you guys for being my great friends. Adios.
Later.
Bye.
This episode was sponsored by Eldorado Gaming. Use the promo code META for 10% off your order. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share. This episode was edited by me, Travis Konishek, and our intro and outro music is by Tyler Heath of the Oh Hellos.